Thanks very much, and as to all speakers, thank you very much for the invitation to be here, and I think it follows very nicely on from that incredibly eloquent speech. My own background is as an infectious disease physician, and I spent the last 20 years living in Vietnam before moving back to the UK just 2 or 3 years ago to be head of the Wellcome Trust. We're incredibly grateful because America gave us Henry Wellcome. No slides. And whilst, as just a message to American friends and colleagues here, although we appreciate some of you may think you're going through a difficult phase, the world hasn't given up on America. And when potentially your politics change, we would all welcome you back with great warm arms. And although we may come in this room from very different backgrounds and very different beliefs, just as you said earlier, the important thing of this few days and going forward is that we somehow bridge the gaps that between us, because there is more that binds us together than separates us. So the Wellcome Trust, for those of you who don't know, is the world's second largest charity, philanthropy, an asset base of about 33 billion US dollars. And it invests in a broad range of things. And the reason I came back from Asia to our headquarters in the UK was I think it's a relatively unusual organization that sees the same benefits from science, from innovation, from technology, but also appreciating that none of that will have the impact that we wish it to have unless society, the humanities and the arts are part of that conversation and contribute to it. Science will only thrive with the support of the society in which it operates. But it is true that we live in very uncertain times when there's a danger of a return to nationalism and a more insular way of thinking about the world. Just at the very moment in the 21st century, when if you look at any of the challenges, whatever you may choose, from my own background of emerging infectious diseases, drug resistance, climate change, or whatever else you look at, there are actually no national solutions to any of those issues. And the world has to come together and put aside its own national interests and make the world a better place for ourselves and for our children. And it is when we face some of those headwinds, it's when sometimes the political processes may argue against our own values and our own way of thinking. That is when our voice and our leadership needs to become even stronger and even bolder. When the winds are behind you and the political and societal processes are with you, it's easy. It's when there are headwinds that you need to stand up and be counted. And I believe that now is one of those moments. And when we look at the issues that we've had in front of us over the last couple of days, we also must not deny the incredible progress that's been made over the last 50 to 100 years. When my father was born, life expectancy for him in Western Europe was in the mid-50s. When I was born, it was in the early 70s. And life has improved for the vast majority of people around the world. And we mustn't forget that, because we mustn't lose progress, even as the progress that has been made has come at a cost, as we've been discussing for the last couple of days. And with that progress has unfortunately come increasing inequalities between countries and within countries, leading to an increasingly fragmented society where polarized debates are had, and the ability, as we've just heard, to bring together different perspectives but in the same tent become harder. And I believe that is actually the crucial job that we face. As one previous great American president said, the only thing needed for bad things to happen is for good people to stand back and do nothing. And we must not stand back and do nothing. This is the time for us to come together. People in this room know we are on the right side of history, but we must have the humility that brings everybody with us, not just those that believe in the case that we're making, but those who question it. And yes, the issues at hand are very complex, and there is no doubt that we need integrated, holistic, multidisciplinary approaches. But the academic community, of which I'm at least part of, sometimes likes to make the issues even more complex than they need to be. And what leadership actually is about is taking complex issues and bringing clarity of thought, clarity of purpose, and clarity of action. And we will not deal with all of the complexities today, and we will not deal with them in the next year. Indeed, 50 years from now, we will still be dealing with some of the complexities we face today. But we shouldn't use complexity as an argument for doing nothing. Because just because you cannot solve some problem, all the problems, doesn't mean to say you can't solve some of the problems. And success breeds success. So as you start to breed success and you start to see changes in people's lives, then a momentum builds around you. And that is how human life is improved. But in order to do that, and at times in the last couple of days, it's felt a little bit that each of us has bought our own silo. And at times it's felt as if we've been talking past each other rather than with each other. We do have to come together. That may mean that we need to set some priorities. We just heard from Governor Brown, the inspirational work from California, where even a state of 40 million people brought the complexity down to 7 priorities. And it focused on those 7s, just as we heard yesterday from Chile. What we have to do as a community is work out what those priorities are, who will address them, and how they'll address them, and how we then bind them together. And we have to offer a positive vision of the future. I don't believe for the youth of today, who are perhaps not as represented at this group as they should have been, the youth of today don't want to be told, let's go back to some previous era. The youth of today wants to look forward to their era, and we must offer a vision of where we're going, not where we've been. And I think that is the way to engage the younger community. We also need to be more streetwise. We've been incredibly polite to all of us here. That's appropriate, and it's nice to see. Every talk has been followed by a response that says that was a brilliant talk. But tragically, the world doesn't necessarily be so nice in the outside world. We have to get more streetwise. We have to work out how societies and politics really works. We have to bring that clarity of purpose. We have to be bolder, and we heard some of that this morning from congressmen, governors, and politicians. And we have to appreciate that this change is not going to happen in the absence of moving society. And in order to move society, you have to move the political processes. And as a community, we should not shy away from engaging in the political process and trying to shift it. We have to address the here and now. The environmental movement, in my belief, has too often focused on what may happen 50 or 100 years from now. The power of this meeting is that it relates the environmental change, climate change, to people's health today and for tomorrow. And that's why this becomes such a powerful movement. I'm a great believer in moments in history. The real love of my life is sport, and I don't want to irritate anybody by focusing on the Brazilian football team or the Italian football team or something I know nothing about, baseball. But my own sport of rugby and the New Zealand All Blacks, they play at a certain pace, but when they know there's a moment, the team grasps it and goes into a different gear. And I assume that happens in baseball, although I can make no comment. It's the ability to realize you're in a moment when science and innovation and society comes together. And the great art of leadership is to realize you're in a moment and seize it and speed up, not slow down. And I believe we are in one of those moments today in this movement, and by bringing environmental change, climate change, nutrition, urbanization, pollution into people's lives today, if we push that agenda, then I think we can seize the day and change the way the world is going. And we need to offer that in a positive vision, because there are also huge advantages. The country profiles that we're working very closely from the Welcome with the World Health Organization gives an ability, as California has shown, as Chile has shown, as Germany is showing, as Scandinavia has shown, how what we're talking about comes not with a financial cost, it actually comes with a financial advantage as well as a health advantage. In the future, as companies seek to think where they're going to invest in the world, they won't just look at things they've looked at in the past. They will look at the well-being of the people that work for them, they will look at the environmental consequences, and they will look where they can be most profitable. And the environment and health is going to be a component of that. Countries can be incentivized through fiscal and other measures to push the environmental agenda, because not only is it good for health, it's also good for their own wealth and the citizens of their countries. So the Wellcome Trust is willing to play whatever role people wish it to play. We have set environment and health defined by what we call our planet, our health, as one of our major platforms of the next decade. We are willing to work with all organizations, even though we may come from different backgrounds, because ultimately we have to put aside our own organizational egos and come together if we're really going to change the way this is going. But this is our moment, and we should not miss it. Thank you.